baby! Happy Saturday to you. I hope you are having a great Saturday and a great weekend so far. My name is Don Terrell, and I want to welcome you to another great episode of The Color of Motion. I like to say, hey, stories come in all shades. And I highlight people of color and diverse backgrounds in the industry of motion graphics, animation, visual effects, cartoons, and comics. This space that I'm just, if you don't know by now, after nearly 97 episodes, I'm just crazy about. So I want to welcome you to, like I said, another great show. You know the drill. Jump in the comments, say hey, where you tuning in from, so I can give you the shout out that you so richly deserve. Also, make sure that you hop on over to the Facebook group. Get plugged in, facebook.com/group/The Color of Motion. Become a part of the community and the family. We definitely love to have you. We're having a lot of great fun over there. Industry talk, just great conversations, sharing industry news, and all around fun. So make sure that, you hop on over there and get plugged in. What else? Oh, man. You can connect with me on, all my social channels here. I definitely want to hear from you. Let me know what you think of the show, who you might want me to get on, and just how it's going to go. Like I said, we got some big things, of course, planned for the new season coming up. So definitely don't want you to miss out on that. And I definitely want to hear from you. Like I said, we stream live every Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, live to YouTube, LinkedIn, and of course the Facebook group and community. You can check it out there as well. But I always kind of highly suggest people get plugged in over to the YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the bell notification, get plugged in, comment, give a thumbs up. There, you're able to check out all the great content going up. Plus, check out, all the fabulous guests that I've had on the show so far. So I definitely don't want you to miss out on that. So, like I said, hop on over there, youtube.com/Don Terrell, and, join me over there. I tend to monitor the show over there, and I'm trying to get more people to watch it from there, because there we have a community and can have some good engagement. And for this episode, you definitely want to engage, because, me and my next guest, we had, a great conversation, practically a show before the show. So I know you're going to find this just amazing, and the content amazing as well. Mr. No Parking, I appreciate you tuning in. I know you're as pumped as I am for my next guest, and just so glad I can call him friend. So I know you're going to get a lot of value out of this episode for sure. So I appreciate you tuning in and being a part of the show. Big shout out to our sponsor, DG Graphics. They do graphics. They do all our graphics, overlays, animations, and just help us look good all around. So if you're a business or brand looking to level up your brand design or start a live stream show yourself, definitely reach out to them and, give them a jingle. So appreciate them, as always, being a great sponsor for the show. What else? Like I said, I wanted to make this quick because I wanted to leave a lot of time for my guests because, like I said, we just had a great conversation. I know we're just going to have an even better conversation, and I want you to be a part of it. So I think that's pretty much it for the housekeeping stuff. So without further ado, my next guest was born and raised in San Fernando Valley, California. He started in animation in 1996 at Warner Brothers Feature Animation in their training program, where he studied both layout and animation. After graduating from the WBFA internship program, he worked on Quest for Camelot, Iron Giant, another favorite of mine, and Osmosis Jones. In 2000, he moved to Oakland to work at Pixar, starting as a CG layout artist on Monsters Inc. and quickly made his way to the store department on The Incredibles. His credits include The Iron Giant, Osmosis Jones, Monsters Inc., and University, Finding Nemo, all favorites of mine. Who doesn't love Pixar stuff? In Dory, Ratatouille, Cars and Cars 3, Brave, The Incredibles 1 and 2, as well as all the other shorts and films. He currently works as director at Pixar Animation Studios, where he has directed two short films. One, we're going to take a quick look at the trailer. The Pixar Spark short Nona and Know Your Rights for Colin Kaepernick's nonprofit Know Your Rights camp. He is now in development working on his next big project. Everybody, please help me welcome my very special guest and friend, Luis Gonzales.
Well, I was going to ask if there was going to be clapping. I'm like, you have to have clapping when the transition. You have to. How you doing, Don?
I am great, Luis. How are you, my man? Like I said, I appreciate you. For all of you who don't know, he was a little down last week, sick. So I appreciate you. I'm glad you're feeling better, and appreciate you so much more for being on the show.
Hey, no problem. I mean, after 2 weeks, or after 2 years of not getting corona, finally caught up with me, man. And I told you a little about that. I know it was my fault. Like, I was too cavalier, and here I am, like, in my ninth day of my 10th day quarantine. So I apologize to the audience if I sound a little nasally. I usually don't sound this nasally, but sorry.
Yeah, I'll kind of clean that up a little on the post
Do
when I
that,
post.
please.
Yeah, when I post it up. So I'll try my best. I'm not a sound audio guy, but we'll try my best to do that.
You know what they
But
say,
like
like,
I said, more importantly, just glad you're feeling better.
thank you.
And big note to everybody out there: don't sleep on Corona. It's still around. So do what you need to do. Do what you need to do.
Please, nothing.
Mr. No Parking welcomes you. Like I
Thank you.
said, I hope everybody is as geeked about this as I am. Like I said, I know when I first saw Nona, the trailer from Nona, and then saw it, I was like, I gotta get Louis. I gotta connect with them and get him on the show. And like I said, just so thankful and appreciative that we connected, and just so glad to be able to call you friend, bro.
Right on. The same, the same. I felt like, that's the thing, man, is like when you reached out, or like on my LinkedIn, when people reach out, like students and whatnot, it's a community, right? Like, it isn't just about me, it's about how I give, how we share, right? Like, all this experience I have, that I've worked with a lot of good directors on a lot of good shows. I'm very fortunate. I'm very lucky. I'll say that first. Hard work and stuff comes up, makes luck happen, but nevertheless, I'm lucky. And what good is it to have that experience and not share it with other people like myself that didn't know this stuff could exist, didn't
Yeah,
know that I could fit in a place like this,
yeah,
So that's why I like doing this stuff. It's just more about the sharing. It ain't really about me, because it's not like my name is the biggest draw. I didn't direct The Incredibles. I didn't do those. I was alongside it. I carried that baby. I helped nurse that baby to life, but I didn't. I'm not the papa. I'm not. I
yeah,
am not a father. So I
yeah.
get it. But still, the experience itself, I think, is almost more important, because we forget how many people it takes. It takes a village to make these films, and I'm
Yeah.
talking like probably like more like a city.
Yeah.
but
You
it's
look
a
at the
lot of
credits. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But we talked about this a little bit before of how important it is to see somebody that looks like you that's in at a place like Pixar or doing something that they want to do because it just like I said it just really does make an impact. So much so that sometimes we take it for granted, but when you were a kid you thought the same thing. I would have loved to see, one or two this in animation at the time and then just inspire you.
right. I mean, when I was growing up, I loved comics, and of course I loved like the Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, like Image era. But the era before that was beautiful too. When you Neil Adams and Joe Kubert, and you look back and you just kind of
Yeah.
look back at the greats. And the thing I loved about them always was that one, they were colorful and they were interesting, captivating stories. But I found myself as I got older going like, I don't, when you did see I could swear like it was like if you saw anybody of color in a team, right? Like say New Mutants or something like that. It was like, I'm buying that. I'm buying that because I just want to see what that has to offer.
Yeah.
And I remember like as I got into high school, like I actually wanted to be a comic book artist first because I wanted to. Well, actually, I'll back up and say I wanted to do comics. I was drawing all the time. It was my outlet. I was like this kid that, I love to draw. So, if you love to draw, if you're an artist, you're relatively sensitive. I don't
Yeah.
care what you say, how tough you are, how tough you act. We're all sensitive because that's what makes an artist. And, it's one of those things where you go like, wow, I'm not seeing myself. And then I found this three brothers, the Hernandez brothers, and they had this book that was called Love and Rockets. And it was like, oh my God, it's like, Mexicans or Latinos in the punk scene, and like, but they're also going to outer space. Like it had all this wildness that was like straight up my alley. I was like, hell yeah. Like I get it. I love it because it wasn't like, everything was, standard, you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Standard. And, as much as you could like the art and enjoy it, it still felt like, it was lacking. Like, you wanted to open it up
Yeah.
and normalize, right? Like now I find myself using the word normalize because, it isn't enough to go, oh, we have more content on, say in streaming shows. But for me, especially in animation, it feels like normalizing us in positions that don't feel like we're relegated to, like that we're okay with,
Yeah.
is everything,
Yeah.
right? Like normalizing us in comics is huge, like making sure it's not just a one-off, like a special thing, it's like, no, like it's you can be someone in the bodega or a grocery store. You can also be the superhero. You can also be the spy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to explain it. You
Yeah.
don't have to give the dark urban backstory of how they came from the hood and fought their way to being the best. Nah, you know what I mean? Because like you have to do that with Bond.
Yeah.
No, you give him a cigarette. He acts really bad to women, and men were like all about it. You know what I mean? Like, yes, that's the guy I want to be.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why
Yeah.
why is it that easy for some and not for us?
Yeah.
And I think it's just a mentality slightly. You know what I mean? It's like we kind of get thought like it's, oh man, just because we get an opportunity, let's play it to the degree of what we know. Let's get into the backstory. It's like, nah.
Yeah.
What I love about shows these days is that they're just jumping in, not apologetic, just like this is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's what excites me the most is like the normalization of us in spaces that we're not used to seeing ourselves.
Yeah.
That to me is where I want to see entertainment go.
And I think that's what every creator has been crying out is just saying, "Hey, we're not all drug dealers. We're not all thugs. I mean, our life gamut of life runs just as wide as anybody else's. We do all the same things and love all the same things. So there's so many more stories outside of what's typically been thrown out there and just regurgitated to us, that type of thing. And I think people are hungry for that. And we're at a point in time now where that's what people want to see. People want to see the outreach life of what, somebody else does. And I think that's why, kind of Soul was really good in its own little way. It was something other than oh, he wants to be he grew up in a thug, this and that type of thing.
Yeah.
It's just a different lifestyle that and story that's put out there that people can see that we all, you and I both know, we all lived it, just an average, ordinary type of life,
Right.
the struggles.
Well, it's an interesting thing because, stories at their core, when people talk about like Pixar films, they're family films. Yes, they are. But here's the thing that makes them so tricky. It isn't if it's done right, like when I feel like I look at, the very beginning of Pixar, at its core, they're all human truths, right? Like, so we can all identify with it, with being jealous of the new guy, being afraid for our child because they have a little bit of an injury. So we
Yeah,
helicopter parent. Like, these things are not exclusive to any gender or race to a
yeah,
certain extent, right?
yeah,
They are human truths. And those human truths are where stories lie. That's where stories that have survived over time come from.
yeah, yeah.
And so all we're doing is going like, look, we have human truths too.
Just
You
to,
just you get a
yeah,
different, different side of the coin. You know what I mean? You get to see it through a different lens,
yeah,
so that we can see each other.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? Because like that's what I love about stories is that they shouldn't feel like, oh my God, you have to make everything like so this or the other thing. It's just like, no, look at I have been heartbroken like you have.
yeah,
I have lost. I'm afraid,
yeah,
right? I'm afraid for certain things, like everybody else is. So
yeah,
if you start from there and then build the character out in a rich way, whether they're great, kind of silly or whatever, it still comes from a good place, and it doesn't mean that we can't. But stories like that connect us,
yeah,
right? Create community. It
yeah,
helps us see each other. It helps diminish the things that have been put out in the media to inadvertently separate us,
yeah,
right? To
yeah.
divide us. And I think
Well,
if there's any time now, like now is the time to bring us together, and if it's stories that do it, movies that do it, by all
yeah,
means,
yeah.
let's utilize this.
I definitely feel like, which is, I felt like I said, Pixar's an oddity. Really, Pixar is probably one of those oddity studios that they just put out. Everything they put out is really just top notch award winning stuff. But what I loved about Pixar is they really hammered home the point of story. And that's
Mhm.
where they always start. They always start with the story and doesn't resonate. My thing was, okay, story. Let's just get some characters of color and different people in these stories, you know.
Yeah, well, absolutely,
you know?
absolutely. I mean, the there it means story is it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people,
Yeah,
right? Like story can be action adventure, completely like popcorn roller coaster ride, like fun, absolutely, but I oftentimes look at stories like meals. You know what I mean? Like what I like about Pixar and some of the other studios that try really hard or filmmakers is that they're trying to give you a really well-rounded meal, something that really takes you on a ride and just finishes you with that perfect dessert, or if
yeah,
it's a shot of sherry, whatever your perfect end to a meal is. That's what they try and do, and they don't do it through trickery or through like big colorful things,
yeah,
right? They always work hard at getting to the heart and the truth of the human endeavor, the human movement, right? And
yeah,
that's why our movies, I think, tend to be good,
yeah,
is because they hit that so hard all the time. Like iteration process at Pixar is ridiculous, and it's unheard of. I don't think there's too many other studios that can actually afford to do this, let
yeah,
alone do it,
yeah.
because it takes a lot. And so we probably screen our movies internally like at least 6 to 8 times, right?
Wow, wow,
And that's like full boards, like movie ready, kind of not render, but like storyboarded with sound, all that, and
yeah,
show it inside and get those notes. Notes are funny because
yeah,
like people sometimes don't realize that they are, given their like, oh, that's too blue. I like purple, so make it purple. That'll make it better, right? And it's like I don't know if that helps. You try and dig down to the intent,
yeah,
and so there's a lot of excavation and trying to understand and align kind of what people are saying to really dig deeper in that truth, right?
yeah,
Because it's the deeper you dig, the more layers you get, and the more like fulfilling it feels as a character, the more rich they feel.
yeah,
And if you can't make rich characters, you don't really buy them. You just kind of they feel like they do feel like puppets. They feel like dancing color. You know what I mean? It's like because they don't give you any heart. So
yeah,
like our studio works hard to try and get that in there with every film.
No, and like I said, I think Pixar is a rarity in that kind of thing. Another thing I really did kind of like about Pixar was the way that Steve Jobs set it up, a communal type of thing where everybody was kind of connecting and communicating with each other, bouncing ideas or getting an idea. I thought that was a really clever way of setting up a company so that everybody is connected, from the IT person to just everybody, not just, story artists and directors, but just everybody could connect in this one communal place, which I think at Pixar is the lunch place, or the atrium,
Right.
where everybody can just, feed off of each other.
No, and that's true. I mean, that was a great outlook in terms of a bigger design for the company. I'll tell you the thing that when I first started, it was like 2000, so it was below 1,000 employees, I believe, at the time. All hustling on one movie, which was Incredibles. I mean, sorry, which was Monsters Inc.
Yeah,
And then rushed to finish it when I was on. The thing that I loved was I loved that it felt like a pirate ship. It kind of felt like us against the world. Like
yeah,
we're gonna prove what a good story is, and like we're gonna make it great as we can. You know what I mean? Like there was like that. It was both kind of cockiness, but also like that. And this is what I responded to: is that us against the world kind of feel, right? It's kind of like growing up. That's my friends. It was always us against the world. It's like
yeah,
no, because as a guy of color, like you're as a kid, you're ignored until you become more manly, and now all of a sudden you're a threat, and you have teachers, telling you ain't gonna do nothing with your life, and like look down on you and all that stuff, and it can program your way. It
yeah,
can make you self confident, or not as self confident, or it can make you push back, which is what I did. I was a stubborn kid, and I was like, man, I'm gonna prove you wrong, right? Forget that. So when I got to Pixar, and they were kind of like, we're gonna prove you wrong, or we're not gonna do musicals, we're not gonna do this, we're gonna make movies, we're gonna make like top notch, like human endeavor, like just we're gonna craft this to the nth degree, make it try and reach perfection, right? Like try. I love that because there's nothing better than a young man or a young person coming and going like, you know what? Hell yeah, that's what we want. We want to follow someone who wants to just charge into battle and go like, we're gonna take this shit. All confidence. There is no loss, right? We don't lose. We thrive and survive, and we make it better. And I love that, because I'm like, let's go. Coach, let's go. Like there's so much to learn here, and that enthusiasm is so infectious, and I've always appreciated that because
yeah,
Brad on Iron Giant was the same way. He was just
yeah.
like, we had the third of the budget of every other feature at the time, and it was his kind of, I think, his first full feature animated film.
Animated. Yeah, it's such an amazing story, let
Absolutely.
alone the animation, but just the story of it, which is why I already knew Incredibles was going to be a great, great animation come out of Pixar because Brad Bird was helming it. So I just said, okay, this is going to be really good. Mr. Kenny, I appreciate you tuning in, savor the flavor of the awesomeness in you peeps for sharing your delectable. He has some very descriptive words.
That was good.
Delectable, scrumptious. I can never really even get through
Hey,
it. Deliciously, edibly tasty, good, heartfelt thoughts with us today. I appreciate you, Kenny, for tuning in for sure. Mr. Dre, I appreciate you, brother. What's up, Louis Andre Rodriguez? I appreciate you for sure tuning in and being a part of the show. I know you're ready for the convo there, Dre, for sure. I don't know if this Mr. or Mrs., but oh man, I am missing this. But you could always catch if you mean you're literally missing the show, which I don't think you are because you commented, so you should be said. So, but you can always, if you have to miss it, you can always check it on the channel for sure. Mr. Antoine, I appreciate you, brother, tuning in. I'm trying to be consistent with the show, and yeah, I appreciate that. And I know not everybody is going to be able to catch it live every week, which is why I say, get plugged into the YouTube channel. You're always able to check out all the past great guests that I had on So definitely appreciate you tuning in there for sure. He also says, I love the movie Soul. I love seeing black people on the big screen. Yeah, I was, that's probably, like I said, uh, I had mixed feelings about it. I loved it. It was a great animation. I kind of had my mixed feelings on it. But like I said, with Pixar, you definitely can't go wrong. I think I got pretty much all of the DVDs of most of the ones that they cranked out for sure. And just like I said, it's just a great company all around. Uh, Before we get into some questions of mine, Mr. No Parking has a question for Lewis. Which part of making a short film was the most challenging to overcome? You're stealing my questions, but that's okay. So,
Well, we might as well jump in. I gotta say, because I've been I've been doing this for a while. I've been working towards being a director and making a short for a minute. That the one thing I had was confidence in my skill set, right? Like I understood how deep and how how treacherous and how story is. Story is relentless. Like you just kind of you throw yourself into the deepest part of the ocean where it's tumultuous and like you don't think you're going to survive, but you survive. And I've been through enough films enough to know that that's the way it works. So that in terms of production, I wasn't afraid. I just had to jump in. I think the biggest thing for me to overcome was just my own self. I mean, I think it's like anything, get out of your own way, stop tripping yourself, just start walking forward. And I think once I started like really trusting myself is when I was all in. You know what I mean? When I was the most happy, because I got to say, like, once I made that switch, it was the best experience of my life, and this is during like the height of Corona, right? Like this is when everything's popping off. People are still are like fighting over toilet paper. There's just all
yeah.
kind of stuff going to jump up. The world's gone crazy, but I had this little sweet spot where, in the eye of the storm, I'm in my computer working on this stuff with my little team, and it just felt like a punk band. You know what I mean? Like we're in the garage, just trying to like just make something good
Yeah.
for ourselves,
Oh,
so that way if we love it, hopefully that comes off in the short itself, because I'm a firm believer in the experience of making a film is always reflected in the film. So if it's a hard film, sometimes they're like, that was a success, but you have to look at what the hardships were. You know what I mean? Like, was it hard work? Meaning that like Iron Giant, we had a short amount of time. I must have worked like 90-hour weeks or something crazy like that for
wow.
like better part of like a year.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And it was, but like Mondays when I'd see that reel, it was like glorious. I was like, I knew what I was about. I love this film. I'm all in. I'm all in with Brad, in the way he's running stuff. It's us against the world. And when it comes down to it, that's what I thrive on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to get out of your way, and then good things come. No matter how tough it is, you just enjoy and know what you're doing there. You're just trying to entertain. So you're just working hard to squeeze every bit of entertainment and goodness out of it. Now, for the short, it's interesting because, unlike the films, you have a little bit more room to kind of experiment.
Yeah.
With the short, I basically, boarded it, came up with it and boarded it within a handful of months,
Wow.
which is really fast. And I turned it over 3 times, which is the most I can do in the time I had. But without that 3 times, I wouldn't have found what I had. Now, if I had a couple more times, would it be better? I think us artists always think yes, but I think it's great that we got it done on time and with all the stuff that we wanted, in there and more. Really relying on my team to bring some stuff, which they brought a lot. The short wouldn't be half as good without them. But that's the
Amazing.
thing. You get out of your own way, good things happen.
Amazing. Amazing. Like I said, for everybody just jumping in, like I said, having a fun sit down with my friend Louis Gonzales, director with Pixar, and we're going to take a little look at Nona in a little bit here. And I got so many questions. Definitely, if you got questions, I would highly recommend taking advantage of this opportunity and time to ask your questions because, like I said, we definitely got a legend here for sure, and so excited. But I'm curious, you know, even though it's a short, did you, like I said, you talked a little bit about getting out of your own way? Did you have this kind of thing about you've worked on these other films with Pixar with all these amazing directors, Pete Docter, all the other ones. Uh, they they've got so many. Did you have kind of this initial angst of like, well, can I direct?
Oh yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah, that's me getting out of my way. Like you can't help but to have self-doubt. We are comparative creatures, right? They teach us that in school. You compare shit, and we grow up with this notion of what success is by comparison, right? No one tells you that success is what your success is different than my success. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
in what it is to really believe that, you kind of have to go through the process. You can't just get it for free. So I had to go through it, and there's times where I'm comparing myself to like, oh, this will never be as good as Brad. What would Brad do? And I found that, you know what? I don't care what they would do, because
yeah,
this is art. This is my story. This is my art. I need to find out what I'm going to do. So if I'm not trying to figure that out, I'm not going to have a real point of view. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a bad version of whoever it is that I'm trying to emulate.
yeah,
And if that's what I want to do, that's just a choice I make. I'm not dispelling it, because everyone's got to have the thing that, they got to do their job in the way that makes them feel comfortable. Me, I'm used to getting thrown in the deep end. I've been doing this for my whole career. So for me, it was a chance to learn about myself. And it's not easy, because
yeah.
you hit those walls and you're like, I am the worst. I am going to fail. This is going to be so embarrassing when I put it out. I'm going to have to do interviews like this. That's where your brain goes, and then you
Yeah,
go like, you know what? I've been running through walls all my life. Like, why is this any different?
yeah.
And by the way, who gives
Gives a
a
flying,
whatever?
flying
You know what
flip.
I'm saying? Yeah, who cares? Because you know what? If I'm not trying to put myself out there, I'm not really trying to live life. I'm not really trying to find out about myself, and that's what I'm here to do.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? So I need to find out if I am a good director. If I'm not, then I need to look at another job.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Or,
yeah,
or I need to know my role, because I think what's great about movies and sports, is that they're both team things. And I think that knowing your role and accepting your role are two of the most important things you can figure out about yourself, because not
yeah,
everyone's meant to be a director.
yeah,
I needed to see if I was meant to be a director.
yeah,
When I got into it, I realized that I've never been happier. And
yeah,
it's not because I'm in control. It was because of the community that it developed.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that community, that team, was the best, in
yeah,
my opinion. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Because we were all facing forward, broad
yeah,
shouldered, arm in arm, and we were going to storm the world. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
How it came out, I'm so proud. But, once it's in the world, it's like a kid. You can't control it. People are going to see it. Timing is a thing.
yeah,
All you can control is putting out the best quality, the best version of what you think it is,
yeah,
and feel good about it.
yeah,
And if you could do that much, a lot of good things happen.
yeah. And the reality is, you're never gonna please everybody,
Oh
but
no.
you do your best. And it's funny that you said that because um, I had an interview with Scott Christian Sava. You know, I think in season one, he came on and he directed Animal Crackers on Netflix, and that was his first time directing. First time directing. And I had asked him, just kind of the same thing, and he was saying, I had no idea what I was kind of doing, but to my benefit is I surrounded myself around people that were good at what they did. So it
Yep.
made my job so much easier. It made the project so much better because I trusted in what other people's skills were and that they brought to the table. So I think that's a big thing is trusting the team around you.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Oh
that
yeah.
can definitely help you.
Developing that ability to talk to each other, right? The back and forth of trust, right? We talked about trust before this, right? And
Yeah,
respect. That plays heavily into like teams, I think, in terms of like, I can't be so caught up in my own, head that I'm like too controlling over stuff, right? I have to make sure my team knows that I trust them implicitly. That's why they're here, right? That's why they're on the show. And I have to, make sure that I don't get caught up in my own ego to kind of like, I need to control this thing, because as one brain, right? if I have an idea about where it's leaning, I'm more of a captain of a ship, right? I'm just kind of directing towards that North Star. I'm relying on my team to really make sure that the ship stays aligned, talks back and forth so that we can have communication to make sure it stays aligned. If it's drifting off, they bring up problems, and I have to go like, okay, let's think about this. What are your solutions? And I'll, weigh it and go, okay, yes, but how, we want to maybe meet in the middle. And that to me is the fun part, right? Because I actually think that that's where the fun happens. It's in the problem solving of it.
Yeah.
It's in the like, I don't know. Do you know? I'm not sure either, but and then you start building,
Yeah.
right? But if you're
Yeah.
by yourself, it just doesn't happen as fast. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So like the team sport of it all always matters to me because you know your role, kind of that we're trying to be successful together, and that's all it's about. There is no winning and losing. Now, this is probably going to be, an opinion, for many people to go like this there is, but I don't see it as winning and losing. I see it as, trying to communicate and share with people. You know what I mean? Like you want to share these experiences through entertainment. You want to share heart. You want people to feel stuff when you make it, right? You don't
Yeah.
want just to be like, it's fun and colorful and it kind of ends. You're like, cool, I never want to see it again. You want people to go like, man, like every time I watch it, I get a little something different from it, even
Yeah.
in a short.
Yeah.
Because when you're making a short film, it's like you don't have a lot of time, and short films mean different things to different people. Some live action shorts are like 15 minutes. You're basically episodes of TV. Some animated films, like I had a friend that was like, he directed For the Birds, and he was like, a short film is a minute,
Yeah.
which is basically a commercial, right?
Yeah.
And they're all challenging. However, it's so much about what it is that you want to give to the audience. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like something that, for me, let me just talk about my short in that I had to make that decision. Do I want this to be a chase thing? Do I want this to be an action adventure piece, right? Because I had a whole pitch, right? Like the original version of my story was, the grandma was, kind of was like a I don't want to say, she was a like a bruja, which is kind of a witch, right?
Yeah.
But she would take care. They lived in this apartment complex, and she took care of these plants. And the granddaughter had to stay with her one day, so the granddaughter's bored, and she has her music on. She's listening to stuff, and she's cute, but she don't want to be there. The grandma has to does her chores like she does, like she is the manager of the building, so she's watering these plants that are actually alive, right? So I wanted to bring some sort of like fantastic reality to it. So these little plants are alive, and there's this one little cute, how kids are, right? One little cute plant that's like, and she's like, oh my god, like that's so cute, and and she gets the stuff that grandma has and dumps it all on it, and of course it grows to like to like 2 degrees, and like the whole thing was them trying to get this plant to like calm down, and they did it through music because she dropped her headphones, da, 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 and they end up like firing up the old Victrola where they have to wind it up to fire music so it can dance. I was totally cribbing from like the Three Stooges, where I don't know if you remember this episode, but Curly was a fighter,
Yeah.
and he didn't want to fight, but every time they wanted to make a fight, they played like the Jack
Pop
in the
goes
Box.
the weasel.
So it was that, right? I wanted to get the plant to be that, and then they figure out how to control the plant, whatever, and it ends up going back down. Da, da, da. But I was like, in that story, I could not find places for heart. I
Yeah.
couldn't find places to go deeper because it was an action set piece,
Yeah.
and it would have been a lot of fun. But I had to make a choice, what it is that I wanted to give to the world, what I
Yeah.
wanted to bring, not give. That sounds too stupid. What I wanted to share.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to share was I wanted to share, people in my life that affected me, my grandmas, my daughter, like children, my nieces and nephews, like
Yeah.
seeing them together and watching that generational connection is different for different people, right? And I loved this notion of what I didn't want to do was, and this is because grandmas are like that, right? I mean, watch my novellas, like go play, right? I'm doing my thing and I'll get you back, right?
Yeah.
And that's not what I was trying to do. I didn't want a grandma that was negligent, you know what I mean? Because that would have been fine. But I felt like I've seen that. What I wanted to see was I wanted to actually get into a space where what are the rituals that we do, that we take on? What do they mean? Why do we do them? Why are they so important, right? And if I told you that, I was like, because she loves wrestling, right? She just really loves wrestling. That's not a redeemable character trait. It's very shallow.
Yeah.
It's very much on the nose. And I wanted that. I needed to go to a layer, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm not looking for the fantastic catch. You know, I'm not looking for the colorful thing that makes you kind of go like, oh, that's a cool concept, but you never really stick the emotional landing, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing was, I was like, I want to be a purist. I don't want my characters to speak any dialogue. Because if
Yeah.
I'm going to learn something about myself as a director, I'm not going to do it through tricking you with, with dialogue,
Yeah.
talking nonstop,
Yeah.
where I could tell you the feelings and then you can feel the feelings I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You have to see the behavior.
Yeah.
Animation movies are about characters, about behavior.
Yeah.
And
And I
so I
thought
need to,
that was, and I was going to mention that. I was just getting ready to mention that, which I thought was a great choice that you made. And I think, most directors will probably tell you that. Try making a film without audio, without any type of dialogue, and see how well it can come across. So I thought that was a great choice by you, by not having any dialogue and just having the emotional plays of each character off of each other.
yeah, every choice I made was to push myself, right? Like to test myself. I didn't want dialogue, right? If the dialogue I do have in there is just additive, it might as well be like penny whistles and like, like sound
Yeah,
effects like Looney Tunes. But that was a design choice, right? Everything that we had done in there was to really push what we thought it was going to be. Like, I can't even tell you, Don, like every choice in there was just laying the track as we got there, right? It was like, can we get more out of this? Can we get more out of this? What else can we do before it has to go away? Because we're losing daylight, right?
yeah,
So we have to make those choices and live with them. And, the team was all about it. Like, I can't tell you, like, from the beginning of the short, people were like, well, you can't have a dog, you know what I mean? Because that's just too much. And I'm like, all right, well, let's not say no yet. When we get there, yes. But let's not say no preemptively, right?
yeah.
And, my team, Anna Lacaz, who's amazing, Courtney Kent, my producer, they were like, all right, we got your dog. And I was like, what? And so, like, your team gets your back.
Yeah.
Like they're like, we believe in you. We believe in this story. We're gonna make it everything it needs. You know what I mean? And
Well,
within,
when you say got your dog, did you mean that was going to be too much work to animate, or it was just going to be too much work working it into the story some kind of way?
oh no, story, not story wise. Story's easy, right? That's the most disposable because you have nothing but like ideas and drawings, and you don't have to make it. Since I'm making a CG short, modeling, rigging,
Mm,
shading, all the layers that
yeah,
go into making these characters and environments, as rich as they are, take time and take money. We don't have time, we don't have money.
yeah,
So like a lot of our characters were all borrowed from Soul, and we just reshaped them and kind of got them into the wheelhouse of our three main characters. But historically speaking, dogs are really hard for CGI. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like the fur right and all that. But we were making stylistic choices, and again, my tech soup was awesome. Like she just fought for everything and made everything happen. I don't know how she did it, because she has a family of her own that she was dealing with, and I'm just like, everybody on that team just brought everything to it. And I'm so thankful to the team that made that short because CG is inherently very difficult because so much has to be done up front
yeah,
for you to use. And that's a lot of time and money that you have to trust.
yeah, yeah.
And we kind of did it along the way. So the dog theoretically shouldn't have been in the short because not enough time, not enough money. I was like, the dog's not bouncing around. I already know the dog's her homegirl, right? The
Yeah,
dog is her dog. You know what I mean? Like they sit together and watch shows together. The old dog is just like the old lady. They're just two old ladies sitting on a chair enjoying their lives.
an
So like,
integral part of the story,
right.
for sure.
And
And no, go
sorry.
ahead.
And the one last thing about the dog is that the dog was pinnacle to me because I needed someone to be non-biased, right? I needed a bystander. I needed someone for the audience to go like, yeah, someone needs to reflect like, hey, that isn't right, or what'd you do? You know what I mean? To have that reaction for the audience. And I love it through animals because animals are great
Yeah,
regardless. And mind you, if this was my only thing I ever made, which is the way I approached it, I wanted a pit bull like in the short. That was it. You know what I mean? With the full swap meet hoodie with Old English baby on the front, all that. I was like, that's what I want because if this is it, I'm going out on my shield. You know what I mean? Like I'm going out like a warrior. I'm going to Valhalla, or whatever you want to call it, whatever film Valhalla it is. That's where I'm going. I'm all in. You know what I mean?
Oh man, no, I definitely understand, and I know For sure, you're not going off to Valhalla because this was an amazing short, and like I said, I talked about before. I know just bigger and better things. But before we do move on, I definitely want to let people check out the short before we continue on with the conversation, so they can get kind of a framework of it. Check this out. Like I said, it's streaming on Disney Plus. For sure. Like I said, I loved it, but definitely let's take a little peek. Like I said, just amazing little animated short for sure. And like I said, Pixar has great shorts just as much as they have great uh, films for sure. I'm curious though, like I said, this was CG. You worked with Brad Bird. Iron Giant was 2D. Do you feel like you lend your storytelling lends more towards Pixar's style or kind of 2D style, or is it for you what you're focusing on is just the story and however it best told is the way that you want to go?
No, well, yeah, I think that for me, it's important that I look at stories as sharing, right? Here's the thing: is like I can't remove from myself from my experiences with the several directors I've worked with, right? Because from the moment I've gotten in the industry, I knew I wanted to tell stories, right? I wanted to tell stories as a comic book artist, right? So I was always thinking I'm going to be a comic book artist, you know what I mean? And so I'm going to tell stories, from my neighborhood, from like whatever it is that I wanted to do because I just felt like, my perspective is different and you have to feel that way, right? Otherwise, why do it? You know what I mean? Even if it isn't, even if I'm not, some person like P.T. Anderson where you're coming out of some other weird place that's really great, you have to find out where you lie. And we're all responsible for the people that we learn from. So I learned a lot from Brad Bird, like, the way his love was infectious for animation and film. And then you go to a place like Pixar and their love of storytelling and what that meant. Us against the world, trying to prove ourselves in every story. Every movie had to be great. It had to attempt to be great. Whether it landed there or not didn't matter. It had to attempt to be great.
Yeah.
And you can't help but to separate those things that you latched onto when I was younger to not bring that into your thinking now. But you also grow and you start to look at yourself, especially after the short. You start to go like, well, why? Okay, I had a reason for why I wanted to make that. I wanted to share my perspective and I wanted to push myself to see what I was made of. But now that I know what I'm made of, now what I want to do, and what does it mean to me? Do I want to do it again? Because that was a big question. Do I want to do it again? And the answer is yes. But the thing is that you have to ask like what it is that you're looking to bring. What are you
Yeah.
looking to share? What do I want to share with the world? And that's the thing is like I want to make sure that I'm sharing stories that are just as fun as the stuff that we've seen. Like I want people to enjoy themselves. You know what I mean? I want them
Yeah.
to feel stuff. I want them to know like it can be fun and colorful, and then we can have some real stakes and we can see some real character and feel those choices in the behavior to go like, oh, that's like my uncle. Oh, I've been there. Just to start to get those layers where you start to really attach to characters in animation because animation is inherently hard because it's an abstract art, right? It's shapes and color moving versus if we're watching live action, it's like, oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
a person. So I immediately understand and I'm engaged and I have empathy for them. It's like the old adage that you have 5 minutes or something like that to lose an audience, right? I think in animation you have less than that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's color and it's fun and you don't really care. Or rather, it takes more time to settle into caring about the characters because you have to really do the legwork up front to really get them to feel something. At least that used to be the adage. I don't think it's so much these days, but I still think that there is a separation that you have to worry about in terms of getting audiences to empathize.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we move on, let's throw a few comments up there. Mr. No Parking. I saw Nona on Disney Plus the year that it came out. Yes,
Thank you.
amazing, amazing stuff for sure.
Thanks,
Uh,
man.
Mr. Antoine. I appreciate that. I know
That's it.
Mr. Luis does as well. Mr. Raul, I appreciate you joining me, my man, brother from Jamaica. Appreciate
Hey,
that. Uh, as always, being a part of the show for sure. Um, with that, I mean, did your parents encourage you? I mean, when you find, cause I always find it interesting. Like I said, as kids, you know, maybe parents and most people, some people think that it's not exactly the best path to go down or most
yeah,
lucrative path. But I appreciate those parents that recognize, like my mom, she didn't quite understand maybe how it would translate monetarily or make a living for me, but she realized that I had a talent. And so she always put me in situations and around people that encouraged that talent and really helped move it forward. Was it the same way with your parents?
yeah. My parents are both bus drivers for the LA Unified, right? As a matter of fact, at one point in my life, every single my aunt, my uncle, all my brothers and sisters, my mom and dad, I think even probably some of the in-laws were all working for the LA Unified. and but here's the thing: is like my mom and dad have always been supportive of me drawing. They remember that old dot matrix printer with the green and white stripe. Well, they used to like print that out for buses all the time, right? And they would just bring. They knew I drew, so they bring home stacks of that stuff. So I used to draw on that all the time. So they always supported it. You know what I mean? But when I got into high school and I was about to graduate, was when they're like, so, and this is me. I'm not doing good at school. I didn't really care. I was always drawing, and I was always, at this point, I was, way into graffiti and hanging out and
Yeah.
being a part of that life. That I didn't really do good in school, and I, didn't really care enough to like, I wanted to go to college, but I didn't do the grades. The art school thing, you needed money that we didn't have, and we
Yeah.
weren't poor, but we were all right, but we didn't have money for that. And so my mom and dad would just go like, "Hey, let's get you into driving buses," right? The family trade, right? The family business, and you'll have room like
Yeah.
because they were like basically like if you become a bus driver, we'll help you get your license, all that, and your schedule is you leaves time to do your art stuff later.
Yeah.
So it's a thought, and
Yeah.
I was like stubborn ass kid, so I was like, no, hell no, I'm not going to do that because if I accept that now, I'm never going to push for what I
Yeah.
want. And I was already hustling, like airbrushing shirts and stuff for like car clubs and like uh, you know high school clubs and whatever. I was trying to hustle up like the art, graffiti storefronts, all that, but it didn't. It was so few and far between because there were so many people that were better than me. Oftentimes, a lot of my friends that were artists a lot of them were way better than me. That
Yeah.
to this day, I go, I don't know how I'm here and you're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you just, you have to just. I mean, I had this weird, like, unreal belief in myself that I was gonna. And it wasn't even belief in myself. To be honest, if I look back, if I'm really honest with you, it was more like I'm gonna prove you wrong. I don't know if I'm right, but all I know is I'm gonna prove you wrong. Right? That was the underlying. Like, if you underline what I was about when I was a kid, I'm proving you wrong. That's all that matters. I don't care what. It could happen now, and when I'm in my when I'm in my teens, 20s, 30s, it's gonna happen. But I'm gonna prove you wrong at some point, right? Here I am.
Oh man, and I know your parents are smiling now, seeing where you're at, and just appreciate the fact that you stuck with what you wanted to do, and
Well,
saw it through. So you can't help but appreciate a child that does that, or anybody that does that. They stick with what they know and what they believe is inside of for you. And we talked a little bit about this, before the show. Um, Growing up, I mean, we both said we didn't see creators like us doing it.
yeah.
Was there somebody that inspired, who was it that really kind of inspired you to keep continuing to go on and go through it?
It was friends, really. Like, I think it was other artist friends. Like, I knew this dude named Tony Rodriguez, and he was a guy that was kind of like a local legend, right? Didn't really get a lot of work, but the dude can draw like Neil Adams. I mean, like, the dude was legit. And I always looked up to him, and he was kind of like the guy that did the con. He was the older brother, and you have these guys like that. I had dudes in graffiti that were like that I looked up to. I was like, oh, damn, I want to be like Two Tone. I want to be like Pierre. I want to be like these dudes. and you kind of aspire to be like these older brothers. You know what I mean? These other, like, you know, these guys are on a different level than you, and it's all helpful, especially when they're there supporting you. And
Yeah.
like Tony was supportive, these other guys were supportive. You know, we're all trying to bring each other up, and that to me is what I loved about. So just to say, that's what I loved about being in graffiti, was that it was a bunch of kids below the margin trying to do art in a way that we can be seen, right? Because
Yeah.
you know how it is. It's like, you know, you grow up abroad, you know, you grow up with color. Like, you know, at a certain point, you're looked at as, you know, a threat,
Yeah.
you know, and it's a weird thing to kind of, it's a terrible thing to kind of feel, because no one ever tells you directly. It's just through a direct experience, right?
Yeah.
10 times a thorn occur. But anyways, it's just that you have to choose what you want. And when you're in graffiti, when you have other few people that are like that are supportive, you have a community now. And that community is strong, and it's a bunch of guys similar to you, and gals too. Like, there were some badass, you know, it was just great to have that sense of community that didn't feel relegated to one side or the other,
Yeah.
right? It was everything. And then when I found my way in animation, I was like, this is the place. I had no idea this is the place, but now I know this is the place, because it kind of felt like a version of that. Now, that when I first got animation, there wasn't a ton of, you know, people of color in it, but there were some.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, and just like school, that's where I sat at lunch, you know what I mean? And that's where we kind of pumped each other up, and, you know, you kind of build, and, you know, more people come in, and it isn't like it's you against them, but like, it's funny how things grow.
Yeah.
And, you know, how art is this binder, you know, that we're all trying to find this truth or entertain, that brings people together regardless of who you are. Like, you could be tall, you could be short, you know what I mean? Whatever it is to make art is not about who you are here. It's about, you know, who you are here and here,
Yeah.
right? And how you kind of work with your community, because it's hard to do it, you know, in a vacuum as well. So you share ideas, and you grow, and you push, and you pull, and you kind of make each other better. It's like gladiators, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, boxers, you know, you bring each other up through questioning and support, you know, in whatever regard. And that's what something that I love, that I'm glad to feel that graffiti gave me to start with, as a core fundamental
Yeah.
value that I can apply and see it through in animation, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, so did you go to formal art school, or did you? And what was your journey into, getting into finally getting into Pixar? You know.
I I met a guy. So I like comics, and I used to go to the store. It doesn't exist anymore. It's a family comic book store named King's, right? And at King's, I used to go talk to the dad. You know, really, this guy named Roberto, and his son was Roberto Jr. And so, like, I'd go talk to them, nice guys. And I'd talk about comics, you know. And one time he tells me, he's like, "Hey, you know, you want to draw comics, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" You know. And he's like, "Well, there's a guy running a, you know, school out of the back of the comic book store on Saturdays." And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Yeah, why don't you? I can talk to him. Maybe you can apply." And I was like, "All right, you know, I got nothing to lose. I didn't go to formal school because I couldn't afford it, and I wasn't really had the grades to get a, you know, a
Yeah.
scholarship. You know, and plus, I'll be honest. It's like, you know, if I'm really honest with you right now, at the time, I don't think I was ready to like try and leave and do all that, right? Because it just felt like a different world, and I was all locked in graffiti and running around. That was my thing, right? So college thing didn't really appeal to me, because I was like, what am I gonna do? Learn how to? I know it sounds silly now, but I was like, you know, I want to do it with this thing,
Yeah.
with graffiti. I don't want to, you know, painting and all that, like fine art. Yeah, that's great, but
Not what I want to do.
where it's at is right here in the streets. You know what I mean? Like hitting boards, and, you know, hitting those heavens, hitting trains, like, the graffiti crew battles that we'd outline parts of the map, and like whoever gets up most wins. And I don't know what we won, I don't know. But the thing was that it was a lifestyle choice that I loved. I loved everything about it. You know, so I find that, you know, going to school and stuff like that was just not where I wanted to go. So you learn from people, and then I met this guy, and he happened to be like, "Hey, I'm not charging anything. All I have to do is just make sure that you show up." And I was
Wow.
like, I'll show up. You know what I mean? And this guy worked at Disney, and he had him and his wife both worked at Disney at the time. And so he just taught me and a couple other kids about my age, a little younger than me too, that as a matter of fact, I still talk to. We're like this small group of five
Yeah.
individuals that we all kind of were at this thing at the same time for a year. or two, maybe it was a year, but we all ended up in the industry, and we're still in the industry now. So we
Wow.
meet up once a year and kind of have like this, I think the school, like he called it this at some point, the guy who was running it, his name was Johan Klingler, and he called it the School of the Media Arts or something like that. And so we call it as our little reunion. We get together once a year and talk and laugh about some of the stuff that went down in that school, because it was, you know, a guy and his wife, and it's kind of like nothing professional about it, but it was fun and it got us where we are, and they were really great, and I'm really really thankful for them, because I wouldn't be here without them. I
Yeah.
wouldn't, So I appreciated the offer, it took me about a year. It took me about a year. He helped me put a portfolio together, and then I was in at Warner Brothers, before I knew it. So I took, I quit a job and I worked for 8 months on my portfolio. He helped me out with it, and the next thing I knew, I was working. You know what I mean? It was really, it happened pretty fast within a year.
Wow. That is
I am
amazing.
lucky though. I am lucky because this was coming off after Lion King, and all that means to the people that don't understand is that there weren't a lot of animation schools then. There was
Yeah.
like three.
Yeah.
And so when many studios are opening up, like, hey, we're all making animated films, they're trying to hire, there wasn't enough talent.
Yeah.
There wasn't. So they get ruffians like myself, raw edge, fellows to come in that had potential
Yeah.
and power us up. So Quest for Camelot, my school. Iron Giant, my college, right? That's where I
Yeah.
got my, I don't want to say
Yeah.
PhD, that sounds a little too much. That's where I got my, I got my degree,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
and
like
that's
on
the
Iron.
best degree to get actual practical working experience.
I
You can't
agree.
ask for anything better.
But here's the thing too, is that and this is why I love Brad, is because he and those people gave me opportunity. I'm nobody, Don. I'm like this. I just started. I'm a nobody in this thing, and I'm like applying in Giant, and they hire me from a trainee, and they move me up to a journeyman. That's a fast move. That doesn't happen very often. So now I have my lead, who's this guy Emil Mitev, who's amazing, and he's doing the workbook stuff, which is like the real leader stuff. I'm doing the rough layouts and then casting them out to other artists that are older than me, have
Yeah,
more experience than me, and I'm doing my work. I'm doing cleanup work on other people's stuff. Like the amount of trust and I always appreciate it. That's why I work like 90-hour weeks, is because I had so much work, but I had so much love for like the project, for the story, for the people. You had that thing I love, which is like, we're us against the world. Everything was like in unison.
yeah,
So it was a great experience. It was hard. I learned a ton. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those experiences where like, I don't just go like, I got to work on a good movie. It's like, no, I got to work on a great movie, and I got a great experience. I got a great education, and it was a great experience.
yeah,
These three
yeah,
things are rare in
yeah,
film.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Because sometimes you're just a part of the process.
yeah,
But when it comes together and everything is about belief in it, it's
yeah,
rare.
yeah. Well, do you think that um, same thing kind of well, obviously maybe not, but what are your thoughts on how it is now, because there are so many schools, there are so many studios that are doing animated features and whatnot, and plus you got this massive number of students now trying to vibe for you. What's your take on the vibe of it now as a trying to get into the industry?
Well, luckily, there's a lot of desire for content, so I'm happy for the youngsters coming up because it feels like there should be work for a lot of people. Um, and that's great, and the thing I love about all these young students is that there's more opportunities to have great stories. Like all I want to do is like, if I want to be entertained. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like, and I have no connection to any youngsters coming up to go like feel any kind of a way. I wish everyone the best because I want to sit down and watch good shows. I want to be like, that was amazing. I wish I worked on it. Like my biggest compliment to anything is like, I wish I worked on it. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah,
And and that doesn't mean much really, but I do like that, just entertain me. Like, like go for it, go for your thing, speak your
yeah,
truth, share with
yeah,
the world. You know what I mean? Share with the world. Give every one of us that makes something is giving something to the world. You know what I mean? Like really, truly, like you're giving a piece of yourself if you're doing it right.
yeah,
You're trying to entertain, you're trying to like make people laugh. You want them to kind of enjoy the 20 minutes, the 2 hours, whatever it is. You want them to kind of have an experience.
yeah, yeah,
And so, I'm thankful that kids have more opportunity than I did at the time because it was rough. But I mean, and I try and reconcile my. I don't want to be the old guy going like, "Well, back in my day," like the like it was so much harder when I was doing it because guess what? It's hard for all of us. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. I mean,
Um,
yeah. I mean,
if I think,
now is such a great time. I like to say now is such a great time for content creators because you got so many great tools that are free, basically, and very low cost. You got all these channels, so much more channels than we had now to get your put your work out there. I think it's an awesome time to be a content creator, storyteller, to get your story.
yeah.
Um, do you feel like that's kind of the stumbling block for some is that they're hung up on trying to get into Disney, trying to get into Pixar as opposed to I got these channels now. I can put out my own thing if I want to.
Well, that's the difference, right? That's knowing your lane. You know what I mean? You have to know that you want to push for that.
Yeah.
Like I always tell students, like when I teach, I'm like, there's a difference between wanting to work, in the system and wanting to tell your stories. And you have to know the difference, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to stretch in a place that you don't see, then you need to kind of like figure out your voice. Like you should do it if you can afford it. Because here's the thing. We all need money, right? Like we all need a job. And sometimes when you work a job to kind of do, to work on your story, it can take away from. But those are the dues you pay. And not everyone wants to pay them. So it's just, it is incredibly difficult. I'm always of the opinion of if you just want to be a board artist, and it's not diminishing anything. I
Yeah.
think it's great. I think it's absolutely great when you know what you want to do. You know what I mean? Like, and if it's a part of the process, that is fantastic because I want to see who doesn't want the best version of what they do of the thing that they love, right? Whether it be directing, technical directing, animation directing, whatever.
Yeah.
It's important to have that, right? So, when it comes to it, it's like just knowing that is huge. So not everyone needs to be a director. Not everyone
Yeah.
needs to find their voice in that way. Sometimes you just want to like really become a great craftsman in the thing you're doing. And that is just as helpful because like we talked about earlier, when you start to make something, you want to surround yourself with those kind of people that really care about what they do.
Yeah.
So they can really inform you and help you make the best decision on the thing that you're making.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've talked about this. For you, um, is it really crucial for you to surround yourself around people, like you said, that are like minded, like you, love the story, love the craft? I mean, were there certain sacrifices that you had to make as far as some people just don't get it, some people aren't happy for you, or some people just don't want to see you, you know, the saying misery loves company. People kind of tend to want to keep you back or hold you back if they see you progressing and they're not progressing themselves. What sacrifices did you kind of had to make along the way um, to get to where you're at now?
Well, I, I feel like, some of the sacrifices you have to make are just in who you hang out with. I think that you have to surround yourself with people that will push you positively. You know what I mean? That will check you. You know what I mean? It's like when you were young, like when I was young, I I needed friends to go like, you're acting like a bit of a fool right now. And I'm like, what? And I think on it, right? And I'm like, no, you're right. Like I was feeling myself too much or whatever. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, yeah, you're right. And that's what you need. And like when it comes to the creative aspect too, you need that. You need to have someone go like, I see what you're doing. I'm not trying to tear you down. I'm trying to build you up, and this is what I see. And you have to, and if they come across that way, it's what we need, right? We have support, someone who's looking out for us that isn't just telling us what we want, so that you kind of hit a wall when you actually go put it out to somewhere you want to, like I'm pitching to a studio. You hit a wall because you didn't get that truth. You were feeling it, and you were blindsided because the people that you surround yourself with didn't tell you the truth. And so it's important to really find people that you respect. And I say respect, not like, not like, you respect them as people first.
yeah,
And if you can respect them as people and as artists, that is this sweet spot.
yeah, Yeah.
Because now you can pull from them because you trust their opinion
Yeah.
as creatives, but you also know that as people they're coming across in a good way. And here's the thing, for me that's been really hard to find,
Yeah.
because it's business. Everyone's kind of got like thing. It can be competitive in studios like this, not so much that people are like stepping on your back to try and get over, but nevertheless,
Yeah.
there's how many spots for directing or storytelling that we're all kind of vying for. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you have
Yeah.
to do the math. You have to make sure it stands up. If you don't get it, the call, you have to accept it and just figure out what the next step is, and
Yeah.
just keep it moving. Because
Yeah.
maybe I'm not meant to direct something at a certain place. Maybe I'm meant to do something over here, but I got to chase that path, and I got to believe in myself to know that I will find my spot. But it's just a matter of, you know, when.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, we kind of talked a little about this, before the show, just in your relationship with Ryan Coogler. Not to name drop anybody, but he,
Bradford,
but
Ryan,
he
yeah,
is, like you said, he is in, like I said, we got into this conversation before the show, because everybody has their perception about what Hollywood is like and how people in Hollywood can be, and we were talking about just and we're not gonna go. I know we not can't go too deep, but we can talk a little bit about he uh, Luis did some work on Wakanda 2 storyboarding. Um, work on there, and we were kind of talking about Ryan Coogler and just him as a person,
yeah,
and being a great person, because we all know that there are a lot of people out there in Hollywood that, like I was saying before, they're drinking their own Kool-Aid and think they're this, or have to act this way, or they have to be this type of person, but they're a real genuine person that is not only a great creative but is a nice person. And like you said, that is very rare that you come across somebody like that, and those that you do, you tend to listen when they're telling you something from a creative standpoint, for sure.
yeah. I mean, I think that you learn from everyone you work with that leads a show, right? And everyone you work with that leads a show like that, that directs, they find they go about it differently, right? Some are harder, some are more selective, right? Like they find a couple of their people and they kind of stick with that. Some are kind of it varies from degree to degree, right? And one thing I'll say, about Ryan is that I just think he's, I just appreciate and respect him a ton. And I know everyone's like, oh, I respect him too because he's made great films, but it's not about his films necessarily. Films as an artist, it's hard not to respect him, right? He's made good film after good film with all heart and integrity, and with the things that he wants to speak on. But when you have that mixed with the kind of kindness and the way he deals with people, or like the way he is as a human being, is just as great. And that to me is the hardest. That it's rare.
Yeah,
It's just rare. It's
yeah,
just rare when you're so like great, like really outstanding as a human being. You know, I mean, I don't want to put his stories out there because I feel like it's not my story to tell. But
yeah,
I've just seen so many examples of just the kind of character that someone like that has after making Black Panther, right? Like after making unarguably one of the the most successful Marvel
yeah,
franchise, and probably one of the most heartfelt. Where you go, oh, okay, that's gonna mess up anybody's head. Not him,
yeah,
not him, not him. Because I helped him design a little bit on Killmonger on the first one, right? And I didn't get credit on it because I was working on the show. It was a conflict of interest. I was doing on the side, but I was just doing it to help him because we had a few lunches and we kind of hit it off a little bit. And when it was done, when I was done with the work and he was going into production, like I didn't hear from him anymore. I would text him, hey bro, you all right? And nothing, right? So I was like, oh, okay, that was a fleet, that was a summer of '69. Like it was a total like one moment in your life that you had. That's great. And I accepted it and it was cool. But then after it was over and he was just kind of getting started on, Black Panther 2, which is now Wakanda Forever, he calls me up and goes, hey, you have time for lunch. I never got a chance to say thank you for your help on Killmonger. Now, I don't know. I've never met a single anybody who did that ever in my
yeah,
career, ever.
yeah,
And we got lunch and it was great, And because of that lunch, I said, hey, well, the offer still stands. Like, I respect him enough to go. He's a good dude. So I was like, whatever you need, I'm going to help, because at this point in my career, if I'm not doing something for myself, I want to help people that I respect, which sounds rough, but it is true. It's like you choose your friends just like you choose your partners when you get the chance. And sometimes you always don't have that chance. So when you do, it's great to try and capitalize on it, right? It's great to try and enjoy it while you have it, because this is a game of feast and famine. You're hot and then you're not, and then
Yeah.
you're hot. You know what I mean? Like, it's ups and downs. It's life. So the kind of character that a guy like that exudes while being such a great creative is just admirable.
Yeah.
I look up to the dude. Like, he's younger than me, but I call him big brother. You know what I mean? Because he is like that to me.
Yeah.
Like, he told me some things that really opened my eyes that I just really appreciated.
Yeah.
And
And like you said, in the midst of that
yeah,
massive
yeah,
success,
yeah,
while having to navigate that massive success would, like you said, mess up a lot of people or turn a lot of people down a different street, for sure.
yeah, yeah. Good dude.
So you got to appreciate, like I said, that, and I had told you that before. I appreciate, like I said, hearing the character of a person because, like I said, most people, we like I was mentioning before, most of us we get our idea of a person's personality from the news or what we hear, and it's really the actual person of how people that we see on screen or in these big places, how they really are as a person, as
Right.
opposed to their persona of what we
Yeah.
see them. You know.
Right. 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 Because I think I haven't worked with anybody really who was just like mean or negative. Like, you hear when I first got animation, you would hear stories about like Ralph Bakshi and like Don Bluth and how mean or what they did to the artists, and how
Yeah.
they either took advantage or just were rough. And I've never experienced that, to be honest. You know what I mean? Like, I saw a little bit of funkiness at Warner Brothers, but but that was on Quest for Camelot, and Quest for Camelot to me was one of my favorite movies to work on. Why? Because I was in an industry that I didn't realize that I would love to work in, and I found this, like, I'm drawing every day. I mean, they're teaching me how to do life drawing. They're giving me all of this
Yeah.
opportunity to make myself better as an artist, and I'm taking it all, right?
Yeah.
I'm just like, give me everything, because I don't know how long I'm going to be here, right? And that I learned so much, because if you come at it with that, when I came at it with that mentality, people kept giving me work. They
Yeah.
just, because I was like, yes, give it to me, give it to me. I don't care what it is. I'll draw a shoe. I don't care, because to me, it's all something I can learn, right? I don't have any, like, I'm too big for something. It was
Yeah.
like, I'm learning, so give it to me all, because I don't know how long I'm going to be here, and I need to kind of figure out how to keep this thing going. So that it was easy for them to give me work. So I ended up being one of the last guys on the show, like in layout, finishing up stuff that needed to happen. And then, the movie's done and we go to the wrap party, and it's my favorite memory, right? Because I'm there at the Man's Chinese watching Quest for Camelot on the big ass Man's Chinese screen, right? I see my name go up, and it's just weird. Now, I wasn't like yay with the movie and all that, but I was like, it was new, and it was like this beginning, this tangible beginning that I'm a part of, that I'm feeling about my career, this thing I found that I love. And we come out, right? I come out of the screening with my wife, and we're sitting there. I'm smiling because I'm like, that was cool, that what a great experience. And you have all these vets coming out of the film that I'd worked with, right? And they just looked like they were coming out of a funeral. You know what I mean? It's
Really?
like arm in arm, like, like they just survived something heavy. You know what I mean? And I was just like, it made me laugh, because I'm like, well, I don't know why they're so sad. They got paid lots of money to go make that, whatever it is. They got paid. They got paid to draw to do that. Like, for
Yeah.
me, it didn't make sense that it had to be great, because they were getting paid to draw for it. That was my goal, and
Yeah.
I'm doing my goal, right. And I was dying laughing, because I'm like, I don't know why they're so upset. A lot of those fools got paid lots of money to do that. You know what I mean? I'm not saying they need to be proud, but everything can't be a winner. You
No.
know what I mean? Like,
No.
sometimes we work on some stinky stuff, and like, the important thing is the camaraderie, and like,
Yeah.
what's great about it is the community that it develops. You know what I mean? Like, Quest for Camo is hilarious because it was a community of, like, you know this movie isn't working out great. We're all gonna angrily finish this together, but sometimes being in the trenches, being angry bonds you just as much as being happy, if
Yeah.
not more so, because there's
Yeah.
more emotion in anger, right? So like everyone that I worked with on that show, there's kind of a kinship because you went through something like you didn't like. I
Yeah.
liked it, but
Yeah.
a lot of people didn't. You know what I mean? So it has that emotion tied to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think perspective is everything, and it's how we see life and how we choose to look at every circumstance that comes our way. Um, Everybody, again, we're having a fun conversation. I hope, like I said, if you have questions for Louis, please throw them up. Um, I hadn't gotten even through any of my questions that I've, or half of my questions that I've been wanting to, for sure. But you talked earlier about initially the first iteration of your story was just, it wasn't nowhere near what the final was. How many? How long was the process of getting it to that final story, and how many iterations did you kind of go through to finally find that voice, to find that story, to find that little nuance of what Nona is now?
You know, it from a purely conceptual standpoint, I needed about a month to kind of find that I wanted this story about this grandmother and this granddaughter with this pit bull, right? Once I found that, and there was a father, right? The father was around in the beginning because I wanted this moment to bring the whole family together, not just the grandmother and granddaughter. But as I started that, I realized that that brought out extra questions, like you kind of started to go like, well, does the father not like the daughter? Like, what does that mean? Like you start bringing in extra questions that you don't need, that just take away from the main
Yeah.
character and the focus of the story. So I needed a month conceptually to kind of draw on my sketchbook to find those characters, to kind of find the core of what I wanted to say. Then I needed to, and then I took a month and I kind of wrote and then did a rough, like I storyboarded a very rough, dirty version just to kind of get it up to see, does this hold any water? Does this seem like something I want to make? Right. And so I didn't spend a lot of time. I just put the basic stuff in. Didn't really play well, but it did show the promise. And I was like, okay, with a little bit of like nothing, a little bit of spit and elbow grease, like at the roughest form as it is, it has promise. And I'm like, cool, now I got to dig. Now the hard work, right? Now you have to like just work on it, throw it up, work on it, throw it up. And I did about 3 more versions after that, like proper versions where after that one yielded like, okay, I like it. Let's keep moving. Then I took a week and a half to then turn it around and fill it out so that it would play, right? We can put sound to it. We can put sound effects and make it kind of feel like a reel. And when that one happened, that's when I was like, oh man, this is terrible, right? It played terrible. Like it just did because it was its first iteration. There was no layers. It was kind of like she was mean, but I didn't quite get why. And there was just misfires all over the place, right? And that's par for the course most of the time. But when you're doing it for real and it's you, it's scary. So I immediately do what most people do, which is like, maybe I should change the idea. I brought my team in. They're like, yeah, let's go for this other thing. And like I was like, yeah, let's go for that. So I'm gonna throw this idea aside and start this new thing. And I took a week to rewrite it. And every attempt I tried to rewrite that version,
Mm-hmm.
it just kept fighting me. It kept going like, oh, now it's this story, now it's this story, and it just kept spinning out of control. And I'm just going in this dark, deep, pit where I'm like of despair, where I'm like, I am gonna hit the wall. This is it. My career is over. I suck. All that fun stuff that you think about yourself. And then I just said, you know what? I'm not gonna fight this. I still like that other version. I have to tell my team we're doing that. And then I got with them, talked about it. We actually ended up taking that idea and being able to kind of put it in. That's why the grandmother and the granddaughter end up in that space at the end, with the big ring.
Yeah.
Because I needed a space that made it fantastic, that made it theirs uniquely. It's the animation thing, right? Where you go to this other space that you just, because it's animation, you can kind of just trust. That's a thing that it's harder to do in live action. Like you can buy stuff a little bit more in animation. I think when you go to like bigger heights, like having a bigger ring, exaggerating stuff, and having that fun. So once I turned that way and I turned back and I redid it with that in mind, and then it sunk, right? Then I was like, oh, there it is. You show it again, show it to some friends. and then you get a few more notions that go happen, then you're like, oh, and things just start to click in and line in more and more, and you start to pull out the things that don't matter, and you lean on the stuff that do. And that's when we found that the whole wrestling thing has nothing to do with wrestling so much as it has to do with her husband, who she
Mm,
loved.
yeah.
And that to me was like, now I found the layer. Now I found a way for the audience to empathize with what this show means, because it goes beyond a TV show. It's a living ritual. It's a memorial, right? It's the moments she planned to spend with someone that she loved. It's no different than going to the grave, on someone's birthday and sitting there and just spending a little bit of time with them to connect again, regardless if they're there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you find that layer, and it's like, now I empathize with her. I understand both points of view. I want them to come together, but they're not. You know what I mean? And so you have to kind of put yourself in that space to kind of find that stuff, to really
Yeah.
dig, to find that more emotional, that more human connection to the idea, rather than just the surface level of like, she loves wrestling and she ignores her granddaughter. I'm like, who likes that grandmother? I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you find that that's the best route or the most typical route that directors come from a storyboard or some other discipline before they move into actually directing, or have you seen those ones that just they weren't a storyboard person, they weren't a writer or this or that, but they just came into animation direction?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think a great example is like Lee Unkrich, right? Lee Unkrich was an editor for a minute before he started getting into directing, and he's a great director. Like, arguably he's one of our best. I think that a lot of our early films he had a big hand in. Like, we used to call it, like they call it the Lee spank pass. He would go through and like tighten every movie up towards a certain phase, and he would just kind of tighten up. Now, whether anyone used it or not, it didn't matter. It was more of like, he would go in like cold as hell and like cut everything that he felt like did not support the story.
Mm,
And sometimes he was right, or he would find moments that were really right, that would really make them work. And he's just a good cinematic mind. And he didn't come from storyboarding, he didn't come from writing, he came from editing. And I think that you find your way if this job is for you. I don't think that I can force myself to call. I can't call myself a director until I've directed something, right? I can't, and until I've gone through the process,
yeah.
because it just it depends on the person's quality, because there's a lot more to just having ideas to being a director. Like, to me, being a director, from the people that I learned from, that I looked up to, they didn't they never really demanded respect. They just had a love for telling the story, and they knew what it was about, and they knew that they loved the medium. That to me is what was infectious. That's the thing to me that I was like, I love that. I don't know if I'm a director. I want to tell stories. I don't know if I'm a director, but maybe one day they'll coincide, so you do things on the side to try and do your own little thing. And it isn't until you step on that stage that you get to put something out in the world that you can call yourself that, because then you find out if that's exactly what you like. Because you can direct something, and if you're directing it to make yourself feel better, you're going to realize it, right?
Yeah.
But if you're directing it to share something that you believe in, regardless of how it's received, now you're there for the job, because you just don't. It's not about it's not about the result and how you're perceived. It's about the result of you sharing something. I just want to share. I just
Yeah.
want to share. You know.
Yeah. No, for sure. Mr. Antoine, this was the same situation for me when I worked on the
Hold on.
original Mulan for Disney. Those big wigs were sweating, bro, on the
Yep.
release of that film, for sure. Uh, and I definitely think that's something to take into consideration. They were upset because they didn't know if that film was going to be a success or not.
Yeah.
So they were they were sweating.
Yeah.
Uh, but like I said, I think for you it was you trusted the process of what you were going through. Um, did at any moment, like I said, which I'm sure there were, but did you feel like, okay, I'm the director, so I'm helming this thing. I gotta feel like or kind of project that I know where I'm going with this so that the people that are working on it with me, buy into it, buy into your dream, your idea. You ever felt like it, was slipping at some point that, man, I have no idea where this is, going to go?
No, I mean, once I got the team, there was no slipping. Like it was just like we were Wallace and Gromit, man. We're throwing track in front of the train, as fast as we can, and that's what was beautiful about I found in directing was that go back to that community, that team. That was the best part. I never doubted my team for a minute, and they didn't doubt me. I don't think, and that to me is like because we had found the film, because we had found what made the special. I think just to back up, I think that one of the scariest parts, or one of the most nerve-wracking parts for me as starting that process, was actually getting the leads on board. Right, like having to pitch this to animation. I had to pitch it to the Department of Animation, and you kind of make your case for, and you don't have the story yet, but you make your case. So they're like, hey, you want people like you want to rally the troops, right? You want to go like ring the bell and have like animators just lining up, foaming at the mouth to be a part of it. And like I have to be honest and say, like I was kind of like, wow, you want to work on this? You really like it? I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, because you just don't know, because
Yeah.
just because you like it doesn't mean other people like it, and you have to. That's when you start to know you have a seed of something that's more human than just your flavor. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. So the
So that was,
beauty of
that
the
was fair to me.
the whole process, and I'm guessing this is the way with, just all the shorts and directors, is you have to go physically convince somebody to be on the team. They're not like assigned, okay, you're working on this short, that, Luis is putting together. You're the one that's, goes to them and say, hey, I'm working on this short. I would love for you to be a part of this team. Is that how it works, or?
Well, it's a little different for every like. So when Spark started, it was a little bit like by hook or crook, whoever was available, try and figure it out because we're just starting this thing. I was I was very lucky that we were like I'm the 10th, I think the 10th Spark short, right? And by then there was already a process of supporting this new endeavor, this new department. So we were the first ones that were actually putting ourselves out there and having people apply for the jobs, for the super gigs and supervising gigs. And so we also had to go pitch it to people, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
to mention that they asked us to do this documentary that was going to follow us doing the Spark Short thing, right?
Yeah,
And
which
so
was
they're like,
great.
not only going to be a director, we're going to film you while you do it. So I'm like, and I just said, you know what? Whatever you want to do, life, bring that shit to me, man, because I will take it all on. Because if again, I go like, I'm always dramatic. I'm like, if this is my last thing, well, guess what? I'm going to have a doc on my failure or success. I'm going to have a short that fails or succeeds, but I will have those two things for my kids, for whatever. And it's an
Yeah,
aspect of my life that I'll always remember because it was documented. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And painful or not, and it wasn't painful. Actually, I'm really glad we did it. That I got the opportunity to do it. That it was just, you find yourself in this funny space where I'm like, all that sounded too much in the beginning. But I said yes, like I always have, just to go like, you know what, I'll take it on because if life's giving me that, then I must need to have it for some reason.
yeah,
So I just have to just appreciate it and just say yes.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And we're gonna take a quick look at some of Luis's just artwork. Um, Amazing artist in his own right, as far as including director. So let's take a look at some of Luis's artwork, and you can appreciate the greatness that is within. So.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I might comment a little bit too. I'm like, you know, this is in my this phase of my life. Like this was my watercolor phase when I was enjoying. Like I wanted to be
oh man,
an
but I think it
illustrator.
speaks to your style and just how you are as an artist.
Well, I find that like what I do love about this stuff is that it is older in the things I used to do, but what I like that it reminds me of just the experimentation and the joy of trying to like take on something new and do it. Like we were real big at work with like these birthday cards and going away cards, and you throw it out there, or you have like these art auctions and you jump in and you just try different things, watercolor, ink washes, like sculpting, and you go ahead and you put it all together do pinups for friends in their comics to go, what would I do with it? You know, can I do something that's interesting? And I love looking at this stuff because it just reminds me of the experimentation that you have when you're young. You know, when you're just trying to figure yourself out.
Yeah.
Like, what is it that I like? Now that's production artwork right there from Iron Giant. So I love seeing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Missed that.
Amazing. Like I said, Iron Giant was so ahead of its time, when
Oh
it
yeah.
came out, and the just the story of it, let alone the style. What are, I mean, you're a Pixar person, but what are some of the ones animations that you've seen, that you like? Oh wow, that's, it's a great story, and the style of it was good. Outside of Pixar or Disney, what are some of the things that you've seen? Because we've seen a lot. There's a cool one. I don't know if you've seen it. Just released on Netflix.
Yeah, I know you're talking about Kid
It,
Cudi's thing.
what is it?
Kid Cudi's thing.
Um,
The one with it's an adult animation. It's I can't remember the name right now. I
uh,
just watched it.
yeah, man, you made me forget the name of it, but
Sorry, it'll come back. It'll come back.
oh man. But for anybody, this is gonna really bug me too. I'm gonna search it. It's an amazing animation. We've seen a lot of different new styles come out. Like I said, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse just kind of blew people's minds in the style of it and stuff. But what are some of the ones that you've kind of seen? I loved Arcane. I don't know if you've seen Arcane. That was
It was
another
nice.
one. But what are some of the ones that you've seen recently that intergalactic? Thank you, Dre.
That's it. That's it.
Thank you, Dre. But what are some of the ones that you've seen that have really just, made you kind of look and say, "Wow, I like that."
Man, I I'm such a fan of animation. The only time I'm not a fan of something is when I feel like it's pandering, right? There's stuff like there's this kid show on Netflix called Corey Carson, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I love it because it's like what the that studio is doing is trying to bring this sense of quality in a way that's really charming and fun, uh, but not trying to like relegate that because what that pool tends to look like tends to be a little more experimental because there's less money or whatever. And I just love when you see people playing and they're really kind of you could feel where they're having fun. So intergalactic, like Corey Carson, there's some shorts in the Love, Death and Robots, like especially the ones that
Mm,
Robert Valley did. Like
yeah,
Robert Valley is a dude I absolutely admire. He's a good dude too.
yeah,
But I love the way his style and sense of storytelling that he brings. And I look for things like that aren't just commercial, but there's ones that are great that are commercial too. Like I love the Lego Batman and
mm,
even the Lego Movie. It's just fun and really they're not trying to change it and make it something. They're embracing it and bringing the fun out of it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
whether it's fun or dark, I just love that we're in this phase of life of animation where we're getting a little more adult stuff. We're getting more stylized stuff than CG. Arcane, Spider Verse and Intergalactic.
yeah,
We're getting the stuff that really is starting to open up.
yeah,
At the
yeah,
same time, I'm really nervous because I keep seeing everyone like it just feels like a lot of studios are doubling down with their films, kind of relegating younger, and it's good, but everything happens in moderation, right?
yeah,
And I feel like this things kind of go in waves, and
yeah,
so I'm really happy to see a lot of that stuff
yeah.
being made, and I hope
Is
it
it
continues.
is that something that you would be open to dipping your foot into, more adult animation and more cerebral style stories like that?
Well, I actually, I yes, well, stylistically, I wouldn't be. I don't know if I'd ever be a cerebral filmmaker like that, where it's too heady. Because I don't. I like. I like. What I like is like my favorite. One of my favorite films is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Because to me, it's one of those things where I just enjoy the fun of what it's doing. I enjoy the relationship of the father and son.
Yeah,
I enjoy it, the space and place at which it takes us. It helps me escape, but I also have some heart to pull from. It's not the most deep. It's not the most rich. It is this really beautiful, sweet medium that I love. That feels like people can enjoy of all across the globe, all
yeah,
ages. You know what I mean? And I picture myself being more of an all ages show than a like 18 and over or 21 and over. Like I don't try and relegate myself to that because, I don't want to let the kid. I mean, if it takes 5 years or whatever to make these things, it's like I want more people to see it. I want
Yeah.
to speak to more people. I want to share with
Yeah.
more people. So like having that fun is something that I'm about now. You know what I mean? Like with the heart, from the truth. Like never really backing away from the truth, not trying to soft glove anything. Like really approaching stuff in a real way, but understanding that art is about contrast.
Yeah.
If there's no contrast, you don't feel anything. When I looked at the Incredibles, the thing I love is like how much color and excitement is packed in that beginning before they cut and Bob's in that gray office and you're just like, oh damn. You
Yeah.
don't feel that,
Yeah.
right? It's so much fun to then something so real.
Yeah.
How they light the discussion between Helen and Bob when Helen's like, you've been out again. Is that rubble? Like, what the hell are you doing, dude? Like,
Yeah.
why are you still doing that? You have a life, that stuff is real and it's in an animated film.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is truth, right? That is truth as adults, instead of playing adults as dummies and like, kids are the smart ones. It's like having those truths about, us as humans is what I love when you really feel in animation, because you have that mixed in with the big abstract nature of like the, what the world could be
Yeah.
design wise. Then you can have that fun with the look and, the types of characters you bring into the world and normalizing, what worlds could look like, without having to explain it, without having to make it some sort of sap story of, coming from this, the whatever, and
Yeah.
it's just like, let's just have fun, like let's just entertain each other. It's like
Yeah.
let's let there be that contrast of fun and heart, like real stakes, real character behavior.
Yeah. 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 And I think that's such the beauty of animation. It could be so many different things in such a an impact in so many different ways. Like I said, for me, like I said, I came to that realization watching Schoolhouse Rock. I don't know if you remember that.
I know.
Schoolhouse Rock made a
Real.
big impact on me because I realized then how powerful animation was in just you know you getting something that you don't think outwardly that you're getting, and it's not until you look at it and think about it, it's like, wow, I learned something and really got something from something that most people would just take as it's just a cartoon, type of thing. But it really made you learn and think about something and impact you. And like I said, it runs the gamut. I love, for me, I love the art form of animation. I love the studios that are doing great stop motion. You got a lot
Oh,
of great motion, that claymation. You got a lot
mhm.
of great people that are just doing creative things. So my thing runs the gamut. I love the silly, Looney Tunes to the Pixar to I love anime that make you kind
Yeah.
of think a little more on a cerebral. So it's just, does it move me? That's for me. Does it move me? And does it make me think differently about some things in a way? That I may have to go back and watch a couple of times to really get, like I said, on some things. Took me, I don't know, 3 or 4 times watching Akira, to really sink in.
That's
To
one of my
really
that's
sink
one of my
in.
that's one of my core movies right there. You're talking
Yeah.
about like that to me changed animation in a way that like Robotech was fun, like that was something I got into, but Akira was the one you're like, animation can do this.
Yes.
I was in, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, this is not funny,
Yeah.
but it's cool as hell. Like, but like kind of disturbing, but like there's so much
Layers. There's
art.
so many
Yeah,
different layers in it, that you don't get the first time around. And like I said, even something as simple as, like you just mentioned, The Incredibles. The person just watching that may not immediately get that interaction or that contrast of, this fantastical thing to Bob sitting in this, or why they chose the color palette. People may not immediately get that, but subliminally, or watching it a couple of times, you start to see the layers of, okay, I can see why they changed the drastic color to contrast this dull life that Bob felt that he was in, type of thing.
yeah. I mean, Akira itself, I think still to this day holds up to anything we do to this day. Like the level of detail and craftsmanship that movie has is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. The amount those bike chases, there was no CG. Those bike chases. I mean, Nope. You saw the movie Nope, right? He's a fan. Like when they're sliding in like that on that Akira like motorcycle slide away from camera, I'm like, yeah, who hasn't this film influenced?
Yeah.
It is a seminal film. It's one of the few. I mean, you might as well put if you ever speak about Citizen Kane, I honestly believe you should go Citizen. What are the movies? Citizen Kane, Akira. Those to me are like, and I'm just saying on a film basis, not even like animation versus live action. I'm just saying like from a film standpoint of like the craft, the sheer amount of craft and love that went into these films and understanding is just on a different level.
Yeah. Well, does that help you? I'm getting a little feedback, so I'm not sure where that's coming from. You're not listening on your end, are you? Or have audio up on your. But does that help you watching live action in your storytelling and how they structure stories and do that?
Well, the structure of story is the same, right? Like I think the fundamental principles are the same. I always just feel like animation's funny because people have different points of view. Some people will call it a genre. It's not a genre. You know, it is a medium. You know, and it can do any genre. But people think of it as a genre. People think of it as kids, you know, only, family only, and by family, I don't think they really mean like I think Indiana Jones is a family film, but they don't see that as they don't necessarily say family, you know, like the way they talk about animation, and you know, like that's why that film's I think one of the greatest things because it's a film first. It's not trying to be family. It's not trying to be animation. It's not trying to be live action. You know, I think the things that live action and animation share, they're both visual mediums. You know, I mean, and by mediums, I mean one uses people and films them in a real space, and the other one designs the whole space, right? And brings that aspect of that, whatever else it could bring. And at the end, if they don't communicate behavior, character behavior, you know, like that's where visual mediums and stories intersect. Music, you know, rhythm, cutting, acting, behavior, all that is the same in both regards. It's just two different ways of going about it.
Mr. Antoine, Love, Death, and Robots. I love The Witness. Great stuff. Love, Death, and Robots was just, all of them were pretty good. Some better than others, but they were just all stylistic. I loved them all. I can't. It's hard to say which one was my favorite. I love the three robots in the first one. Just so many different ones. But what I loved about Love, Death, and Robots was it was a different take from different directors and their stories. So I think that's what really set it apart for me. And I'm looking forward to Disney kind of doing the same thing with the studio over in Africa where they're telling like an anthology of stories. So I can't wait till that comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of appreciate some of the stuff that Disney does because there was the last 2 years I think it's the last 2 years they've been doing this kind of program where they're bringing in young directors of different backgrounds, right? And that wouldn't ordinarily have opportunity to kind of find their way into the system and partner them up with like producers or some sort of talent, experienced talent to help them develop their short stories. And I got to be a part where I talked with these young guys that were both from LA, and they had this great story that it's not done yet, but I think it will be shortly. But it was just nice to be a part of it and talk to these young guys about what are you going for in this? Like, what is the underlying feeling that you want? Like, what are you speaking on with this short? Like, not that we have to be. I don't think every film or every short needs to be like, I'm speaking on this, you know, because sometimes that actually takes away from the entertainment.
Yeah.
You know where it lies as a core. Like, you know, I'm really talking about toxic masculinity or whatever it is. As long as you know that as a true north, it kind of helps measure everything else around it. Because again, contrast, you can't just go like toxic masculinity from the top. It's got to be like, how do you bring the audience in? How do you bring out this idea in the way that you want? You know, like, do you want to demonstrate it as a surprise and have it hit the audience? Do you want to see us build it? Do you want to start at the beginning? And, you know, watching Disney have these programs where they're helping youngsters like that, really helping them get out there and start their careers. I just think that's great. I mean, it's a nice time for some of this stuff. I mean, there's a lot of good being done. I feel like it's nice to see, this anthology series, like
Yeah,
you can't help but to feel like this is a great time,
yeah,
for storytelling in general.
yeah. Um, Everybody that's just jumping on, and I'm I have to apologize. We're hitting the 2 hour mark here.
Are you
I
really?
definitely
Oh, wow.
yes, we are. And I, like I said, I try not to. You know, I don't mind myself. Like I said, when I'm having a great conversation like this, obviously, as you can see, the time goes by. So,
Yeah,
and I love talking this, but I definitely try and be respectful of your time, Louis,
I appreciate
for sure, and the viewers' time. And true, it definitely gives me the opportunity to bring you back on the show. So, I will say this, just one last question before we kind of wrap it up. Let me quickly though throw some comments in there. Miss Maggie, better late than never, but I appreciate you tuning in. Maggie's a longtime viewer for sure. I appreciate you there, Maggie. Mr. Antoine, love Deaf and Robots. Love the. Oh, I said that. This was the other one. Alien, 1970. Yeah, another classic that you
it.
can watch over and over and over again. That's, I think, the true testament of a great movie or a
Mm-hmm.
film that you just enjoy watching over, and you do get those little nuance, pick up those little nuances the more you watch. Lucky number 13. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Andre was a good one. Like I said, Love, Death, and Robots just had so many different fun ones on there, and good ones. Now, Alien 1979 by Ridley Scott is my favorite of all time. The film that changed my life. It's one of the best films ever made. Like I said, there's so many out there. And so many great directors. I loved. I'll tell you one. Inception was just by was another one.
Nolan.
You know,
Nolan.
so
How can you go wrong with
you
Nolan?
can't go wrong with Nolan. So well, like I said, it's been amazing, Louis, having you on here. Definitely, I definitely can't let you go away without saying that I'm going to be bringing you back on, and
Okay.
hopefully you'll be have the time. You're getting big, so but I'm glad I'm
Well, see.
glad I had you on here. But one last question, well, two. The first one is, out of this whole process, you know, of making the short, your whole journey, what's, been the biggest lesson that you've kind of pulled out of this whole thing to date?
Well, I mean, you're talking about life, so there's a lot of big lessons. I think if I was to pull the biggest one, it has nothing to do with skill or talent so much as it has to do with just perspective. And I find that, for me, it took a long time to really feel confident in how I want to approach stuff because I've always had the, I'll prove you wrong mentality, but it's not the same as having confidence in yourself, right? That is a measure of pushing things forward to try and find it. You know what I mean? Find that confidence, and I find that in finding confidence in yourself, it's really comes down to not just you. It's not a you thing. It's a community thing. It's hard to fix yourself by yourself. You need people that support you and that get you.
Yeah,
And that doesn't happen fast. You have to look for it. And I just want to spend the rest of the time I have on this earth helping, working with people that I respect and that respect me, hopefully, to to just to kind of complete a sense of living that just is beyond grabbing at a ring. Because I've never been a guy that's like looking for a lot of money. Money's not my driving factor. Art and creating art is,
yeah,
which I to be as old as I am and say that out loud is kind of silly. I feel like because it feels so like a kid, but I do feel like a kid. Like I feel
yeah,
like animations kept my mind like a kid. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Um,
I
that
tell
allowed me.
people I love it. I mean, this is the one profession that, I could do up until you put me in the coffin, you know? So,
Absolutely. You
you
know, and
know,
I value the people that you make stuff with because that's to me is where the
yeah,
excitement is.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Whether
yeah,
I'm leading or someone else is leading, it doesn't matter as long as there's that like that fire of wanting to do something
yeah,
great.
yeah,
That and respectfully so. Not
yeah,
like, you're, da da da. It's more like, what do you think? I don't know. It's just a place of respect and
yeah,
it's just about trying to do something good for to share with people. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Whatever it is, whether it's a short film or a feature, a series, whatever it is, it's just a matter of surrounding yourself, trying to put yourself in places where people all help each other thrive.
yeah,
It's rare, but it's there.
yeah. I think very few, unless you're in, unless you are creative or in that, I don't think people get the electric vibe that you get when you're in that kind of environment where
Yeah.
things are just
Yeah.
like bouncing and the energy is just flowing. It's an energy that
Hmm.
some people just don't get unless they're in it or are creative and just experiencing it you know
Yeah. And you have to
uh,
acknowledge it. You know what I mean? You can't just be like, I'm trying to do this thing. I'm trying to force my way into stuff. There's a little bit of that, but it's also being able to like take in who else is there with you.
yeah,
Whether you're on their show or you're on and they're on your show, it's how are we doing this thing?
yeah,
They're movies, animated films, live action films don't get made with one person usually.
yeah,
That's a one
yeah,
percentile thing, right?
yeah, nothing,
Everything requires people and many hands to make
yeah,
that
yeah.
happen. So you
and it
accept it,
trans
you build around it. Why not?
and it translates to anything. There is, and that's why. And I was thinking about this the other day, where you hear that term "self-made."
Mm-hmm.
Really, kind of, I have a reverse feeling towards that because nobody is self-made. Everybody's had some help or got
Yeah.
something from somebody somewhere.
Yep.
So I think that's the thing. You learn that if you take in all of this stuff that people are giving you around you, and what works for you, and make it something like you said, whether it's somebody working on your idea or you're working on somebody else's idea. It's just the energy of we're
Mm-hmm.
working together on something, you know,
Yeah.
to make something great. With that, now that you said you've got the directing bug and you love directing, what do you where's your future going, or where do you want your future to kind of take you?
Well, I have a bunch. I feel like it's the classic, right? You talk to any director, like I got so many ideas I want to make, and I have plenty of ideas I want to make. There's a few that I'd like to see come to life, and I just feel like I'm trying to go about how I approach the future, in a way that is well. Here's the thing, animation, and I'm just going to go on this real quick. Animation is notoriously like, to me, it's a weird thing when you have someone like I'll argue, and I'll just say like, Marvel is a little bit like the animation machine, right? There's a lot of hands that make those big movies work. And when you look at stuff like that, and you look at how like the Tom Cruises of the world get pieces of the movie, and like they're part of creating it. They're also part of the face of it. But you look at where the money's distributed in animation, and animation is by and large like we buy the idea, everyone works for a wage, like
Yeah,
visual effects, and there's this really, and there is it bothers me that our stories kind of do you want to make this studio? Yes. Oh wow, that's great. I'm gonna make the story, and like everything that they make off of your idea, your story,
yeah,
it's great that you're able to make it, but like there is an aspect of this precedent set in movie making that us as creatives making these movies that are supposed to hit billions of dollars, right?
yeah,
Or hundreds of millions or whatever it is. If you look at the Toy Stories and whatnot of the world with merchandise, you're like, how much of that do these people get? And most of
yeah,
the time, by and large, our creatives, directors and whatnot aren't getting, a big share of it. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm lucky at Pixar that I think that they try and reward everyone, in a way that they can, which, it's appreciated for sure. But like outside of that, like the Netflixes of the world that, we buy your idea, and like we'll throw it on however we seem fit to throw it on. Like we might advertise it, we may not. Um, it's kind of a hard thing to do because it requires so much work and love and heart and soul that like I couldn't imagine making a show right for Netflix and then it kind of comes out and just drifts away in the chatter of all those other shows that are happening and coming out at the same time. And
Yeah.
there's just got to be a better way, and I kind of would like to feel like however I approach the future, that maybe, there's a little bit of a precedent set for how we can adjust the, margin for both what we do in animation and possibly even in VFX, what I mean? Like
Yeah.
looking at how we divide these behemoths that make a ton of money.
Oh
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
they're built to make money, no,
Yeah.
let's be honest, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and like these big crews that don't get a taste of it, it's really disheartening because, it wouldn't be there without them.
Yeah. No, for
And they're
sure.
oftentimes, especially in VFX. I mean, if you watch those documentaries, like they get beat up pretty bad. And
Yeah, and like I said, it's funny that you brought that up because I just got done reading the article about that the other day. How, like I said, these um, well, they were specifically kind of talking about Marvel because they are the behemoth in kind of these visual effects movies, but
yeah,
all these visual effects creators just aren't getting, credit or the money for it. Ooh, excuse me.
no, I feel you. I was doing the same thing. After 2 hours of talking, we should be like drinking more
Yeah.
water right now.
Oh
I mean,
man. But definitely you want to see it on a fair scale.
yeah.
With that, excuse me, people. Yeah,
Right.
we've just hit the 2 hour mark, so I think this is a big warning sign. Um, everybody, it has been such a fun conversation. Again, Luis, I appreciate you so much. And I told you this before. One, being my friend. Oh man, my voice is just going.
Man, that sounds so emotional. I like that. You're like being
Oh
my
man,
friend.
being
I
my
like
friend. Oh
you
man,
have more friends than me. It's
and
okay.
my
Come on
eyes
now.
watering, so it feels like I'm getting emotional about it. Oh
You lean
man.
right into it, man. I'd be like, oh my god, I'm almost certainly coming back to see you.
Oh
And
my
you feel
god.
that way.
But I so appreciate you being on the show, and I definitely have to have you back on. Um, Granted, providing your schedule for sure, because like I said, I can only expect bigger things coming from you, Louis. Um, if you could hang out for just 1 second in the green room while I close this out to give me a chance to, oh man, I'm tearing up. Uh,
uh-huh.
if you could hang out while I close out the show, and I would appreciate it for
Yeah.
sure. But everybody, like I said, this has been uh, one of the ones that I really been. I look forward to all my interviews and shows because I love everybody that I bring on because they're all my friends. But this one I was really looking forward to because, like I said, it gave me a chance to really kind of pick Luis's brain about some things, and hopefully you ask some questions about there because I know there are a lot of people that are really trying to be content creators and really tell their stories in
Mhm.
a meaningful and effective way. And Luis has done that amazingly with Nona, and just his journey has been an amazing one for sure. So I knew I had to bring him on to share that with you. Um, but please uh, make sure that you get connected with Louis on all his social channels. You can find him. Uh, where is it at? Connect with him. You can connect with him on Instagram. Check out his website. Connect with him. I always say LinkedIn because that's how I connect with everybody on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. But make sure that you get connected with him, follow him, check out his work. Like I said, also check out the documentary that Pixar Shorts did with him, and Afton, the other shorts winner at the time. It's an amazing little documentary. But make sure you connect with him. All this information will be on the show notes on the YouTube channel. So make sure that you hop on over there. Subscribe, Maggie, before you mention it. Subscribe. Hit the bell notification. Give a thumbs up. Comment. That definitely helps out for sure. But everybody, please help me thank my very special guest and friend, Luis, for coming on, gracing us for this long with it. I got a lot of editing.
It's not that long.
Yeah, it's not really, and Lewis is the type of person we can just sit and talk all day about stuff. I mean, we have that kind of person. He has a passion for the medium. I have a passion for it, so we could sit here and talk for 4 or 5 hours just jabbing about this and that. But I definitely want to be respectful of his time. Definitely want to have you back on, Louis, and I cannot thank you enough for one, being my friend, and two, gracing the show as you have.
Well, thank you. I don't know about that, but I'm happy to be a part of the community. You know what I mean? I think sharing is caring. I know that's corny, but like I think that's what we should do, right? Like I spent all this time building this stuff. I'm not trying to hide it away. You know what I mean? You want youngsters to kind of be a part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and definitely looking forward to just sharing more of this. Everybody has been enjoying it for sure. Mr. Kenny, you don't throw in too many crazy words. I can get through this one, Kenny.
Put enough emojis to help that out. He's just like, there you go. I'm laughing.
Kenny usually throws in, like I said, those words. I have a hard time getting through the comment because it's just tongue twisters for me. Mr. Antoine, I appreciate that for sure. Again, everybody, please help me thank Louis again. Like I said, if you can hang out for just 1 second while I close out the show, I would appreciate it. But thank you so much for being a part of this.
No problem. My pleasure.
All right. I'm going to do Matthew McConaughey. All right. Appreciate everybody, as usual, hanging out with us. Man, this is the first time I've hung out this long and my voice went. But I appreciate everybody for being a part of the show. Mr. Oriolua. Sorry, it's late in the show. But I appreciate you tuning in for so long. We got to connect because I know I sent you a message about being on the show. So looking forward to connecting with you. But I want to thank everybody, as usual, for being a part of today's show. Like I said, this was one of my favorites for sure. Louis is such an amazing guy, such an amazing friend. He's just such a giving person, so you can't help but enjoy sitting down and just talking. Thanks for another one there. I appreciate that, Dre. I'm gonna reach out to you probably next week because I definitely want to talk to you not only about what we talked about before, but having you back on the show as well too. So next week you'll definitely not want to miss out for sure. Like I said, as always, this is always fun for me, so I can't help but enjoy just the whole process of doing this and bringing it to you, the viewers. But make sure that you join me next week because we're going to have another great guest as well, Miss Maya Mendanka, 3D animator with Wild Brain, and she did a really amazing animated short as well. And I'm looking forward to showing you. But super talented, looking forward to getting her on the show and, having another great conversation. Hopefully, I'll be able to make it through without my voice going. So, with that, like I said, I'm glad we got through it. I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you, for sure. Mr. Dre, that's my people right there that I expect to see you next week, Dre, for sure. So I appreciate it. Everybody, have a great weekend. Have an amazing week. And hey, I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a good one, everybody. Cheers.